Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshulamilitanjena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaye Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Namaha Bhaktya Vihina Parada Lakshaya Kiptascha Kamari Tarangamadye Kripa Maitam Sharanam Prapanna Vrinde Namaste Charanada Vindam Tave Vasmi Najivami Tvaya Vina Iti Vigyaya Radhe Tvam Nayanam Charanandike Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So we are going to continue rather, the Sri Damodarastam, and first offer our most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of our beloved Gurus, unto Sri Guru Pada Padma Nityalila Bhavishta Om Vishnu Pad Abhaya Charanaravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Raj Srila Prabhupada, and unto Sri Nityalila Bhavishta Om Vishnu Pad Asto Tarasat Sri Simad Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, and our exalted Rupanuga Guru Varga. So we're continuing with the first verse of Sri Damodarastakam. Namam Ishvaram Satchitananda Rupam Lasat Kundalam Gokule Brajamanam Jashoda Biyolukala Davamanam Param Rishnam Atyantato Drutya Gopya. I worship the Supreme Controller, whose form is eternal, full of knowledge and bliss, upon whose cheeks Makara-shaped earrings are swinging, and he shines most brilliantly in Gokul. Running away from the grinding mortar in great fear of Mother Jashoda, he was ultimately caught from behind. So, the last thing that we were discussing, the Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj's purport, he had been talking about eagerness, anxiousness to perform service. And the example of the milk was so distressed, thinking that it won't be able to do any service for Sri Krishna. Mother Jashoda's milk is unlimited, right? And Krishna's appetite is unlimited, but she's completely competent to continue to fulfill all his desires. What's the use of my life? And he begins to boil over into the fire. And then Mother Jashoda is going to run to that milk to save it, because the devotee is very concerned about things to be used in Krishna's service, to protect and honor and safeguard. Because everything is Krishna's property. Everything should be used in his service. And the more we advance, the more we are conscious and we cultivate that mentality. Waste not, want not, right? I just remember this story, having heard of Srila Prabhupada on a morning walk. And they're walking in some suburban neighborhood, and on some lawn, this is very early in the morning, so all the residents were asleep, but a hose had been left on, and was just running the water into the street. And so Srila Prabhupada walked up onto their lawn and turned off their hose and said, "Oh, this is all Krishna's energy. We should not waste it." He didn't see it as their property or their energy. They were wasting it. And that's, in India, they're very conscious because they don't have a lot, water especially. So, and he was also saying that practicing devotees, sadhaks, eternal associates, perfected persons, have this greed and desire all the time. We have to cultivate that sense of urgency also. That, I don't even have a glimpse of Bhagavan. I don't have a scent of taste. I don't have a bit of eagerness. Woe is me. And he quoted Sri Narottam Das Thakur from, I think, Jayani Lo Premadana, right? Pasane kutibo mata anale pashibo Gauranga gunera nidhi kota gele pabo. I shall dash my head upon a stone or enter into blazing fire. Where will I find the treasure house of all wonderful qualities, Sri Gauranga? Now, he began with a definition of what is that pure bhakti? What is uttam bhakti? This is a very important part of this commentary. Very, very wonderful, actually. So he quotes Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmadyanavritam anukulyena krishnanushilanam bhaktiruttama. This is from the Bhakti Samrita Sindhu 1:11. When bhakti is performed without any other desire than the aspiration to bring happiness to Krishna, when it is not covered by the endeavor to accumulate dry knowledge, result-oriented work, or any other practice for attaining a goal unrelated to him, and when it is cultivated solely with a favorable disposition toward him and for his benefit, then it is uttam bhakti, supremely pure devotion. Okay, so in this verse, the characteristics which describe bhakti are divided into two categories, Swarup Lakshana and Tatashta Lakshana. The first category, Swarup Lakshana, includes the intrinsic qualities of bhakti, in other words, what it is. And the second category, Tatashta Lakshana, includes the marginal qualities of bhakti. And when giving a description of this verse, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayana Maharaj would quite frequently have this verse in his lectures. Certainly during the Brajmandal Parikram, this verse came up every time. And he would have someone describe it, and he would demand that you start with the second half of the verse. Begin with the Swarup Lakshan, Anu Kulyena Krishnanu Shilanam, right? Many times devotees would just begin with the first half of the verse, but he'd say, no, begin with the Swarup Lakshan, and then what it is, and then what it is not. So, to communicate how our bhakti can be perfected, the modifier anukulyena means with a favorable disposition, has been used because one cannot perform bhakti with an unfavorable disposition. That is to say, one who acts in opposition to Sri Krishna cannot be performing bhakti. Certain exalted realized personalities have stated that anukulyena means the tendency to perform activities that bring pleasure to Sri Krishna, and that the inclination to please him with a favorable disposition is bhakti. Wait. Oh, this is the part they messed up a little bit. I told them. They had some young people translating this, and it gets a little confusing from the Hindi. What it is that, because I've heard Gurudev speak on this many times, and in other places, his description is not quite like this. The certain personalities have stated that anukulyena means to perform activities that bring pleasure to Sri Krishna. The idea of the favorable disposition, that's not in this part. That comes later. So, if this definition is accepted, that activities that bring pleasure to Krishna, any activity that brings pleasure to Krishna is bhakti, one of two faults may arise. Some things are encompassed by this definition which should not be included within a description of bhakti. This is called ativyapti dosha, the fault of overextending the definition. Similarly, it excludes things that should be included within the description. This is called avyapti dosha, underextending the definition. Right? So this vyapti dosha, there's ativyapti and avyapti. Ativyapti means to overextend the definition. Avyapti means to underextend the definition. So he's going to explain that. What's an overextension? In other words, if everything that gives pleasure to Krishna is bhakti, then the example of the wrestling match, Chanura, Mushtika, and other demons were striking Sri Krishna's limbs. Sri Krishna was certainly enlivened by their attack and began to relish the mood of being a great hero, Vira Ras. How can the attacks of the demons be understood as pleasurable for Sri Krishna? The answer to this is found in part of a verse from the first canto, 13th chapter, 30th verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Manasvinam eva sat samiparahara. Although in the eyes of ordinary people, a terrifying battle with an enemy seems torturous, it is in fact exhilarating for the fighters. In that case, if we conclude that the demons' horrible attacks during the wrestling match were acts of bhakti because they gave pleasure to Sri Krishna, then the fault of ati-vyapti, overextension of the definition, arises. Even though these malevolent endeavors caused Sri Krishna to feel pleasure, which is apparently the quality of bhakti, they were actually strictly opposed to bhakti. So in other words, unless bhakti includes anukulyena, activities performed with the appropriate bhav or emotion, favorable mood, right? Then it becomes bhakti. If it's not done with the mood for the benefit of Krishna, right, then in a favorable mood out of love, then it's not bhakti. Now, conversely, consider the example of Mother Jashoda, breastfeeding Sri Krishna as he lay on her lap. At the same time, the milk she had kept on the stove was boiling over into the fire. After taking Krishna, who was not yet satisfied, off her lap, she went to save the milk. Right? He actually was clutching onto her breast. He did not want to be put down, but she wanted to save the milk. So she removed him. Even Putana could not remove him from her breast. And when Krishna was even younger than this, but Mother Jashoda, by the strength of her prema, could easily remove him with one hand, just take him off. So, but Krishna is not yet satisfied. This caused him to experience much displeasure. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Sanjata Kopa Spuritaruna Dharam, his tiny reddish lips began quivering from anger. Mother Jashoda's action greatly displeased Sri Krishna. But if we conclude that her endeavor does not come within the definition of bhakti, then the fault of avyapti, underextension, arises. In other words, it's not pleasing to Krishna, right? So if the only definition is activities which please Krishna is bhakti, it doesn't encompass that activity of Mother Jashoda, which is clearly bhakti. So it's an underextension. So in both cases, if you only say activities that are pleasing to Krishna, that's bhakti, there can be cases of overextension and underextension. So how to reconcile? The nature of exalted devotees, Mahabhagavats, is that they want to engage every soul in Krishna's service. When Mother Jashoda saw that the milk was sacrificing himself into the fire by boiling over because he was bereft of Krishna's service, she immediately removed her darling boy from her lap and tried to save it. With both his hands, baby Krishna firmly caught hold of his mother's breast, and with his legs he clung to her waist. He held on to his mother in this way with all his might. Putana, who had the strength of 10,000 elephants, could not free herself from his grip. But in the presence of Mother Jashoda's Vatsalya Prem, Sri Krishna, the possessor of all potency, could not stop her from putting him down. This is the mystery of Krishna. He's all-powerful, complete, the Lord, the creator of everything, but he's controlled by love. He can be completely overwhelmed and conquered by love. This is his nature, to give unlimited love and to receive unlimited love. And Gurudev would go to the West, especially in the early days. Sometimes in his lectures, he would start with this simple phrase, God is love, and love is God. Maybe you saw that in some of his transcriptions, right? And everything is in that. Everything is in that. With one hand, Mother Jashoda easily pushed him from her breast. Then she removed him from her lap, sat him down nearby, and went to save the milk. The Siddhanta, or the perfect philosophical conclusion, behind this incident is that Mother Jashoda's love for Sri Krishna is much greater than his love for her. Indeed, Sri Krishna comes under the control of her love. In the presence of this motherly love imbued with deep possessiveness, all of Bhagavan's unlimited majestic potencies are defeated. Her motherly love imbued with deep possessiveness, my son, whom I must nurture, protect, raise. I need this milk. I want to make nice sweets. I can't make rubbery sandesh, para with my breast milk. He may want that, but I want to give him variety of nourishing, wonderful things. I need this milk. Right? Here, another point is to be considered. Although the superlative manifestation of Sri Krishna's unlimited opulence, Aishvarya, is found only in Braj, it remains submerged in the fathomless ocean of sweetness contained within the Braj pastimes. That is to say, even when Sri Krishna's infinite opulence is fully revealed, it easily fits within the all-accommodating embrace of Braj's sweetness. Right. So that is one of the extraordinary truths of Braj, that it is the land of sweetness, of Madhurya. Madhurya can mean the abiding mood in Braj, sweetness because of the intimacy and lack of awareness that Krishna is God. Just that he is whomever you see him according to your relationship, as a friend, some see him as a friend, some see him as, oh, I'm a servant in the house. He's like my master. But the Dasya Ras in Vrindavan is more akin to Sakya because there's deep intimacy. There's very powerful mamata, but there's not that gap of Aishvarya that exists in the Dasya Ras that exists in Vaikuntha, for instance, or even in Dwarka. Right? Raktak, Patrak, they have a very intimate relationship. Mother Jashoda, her sense that I'm the maintainer, the protector of Krishna, this Madhurya, this sweetness, covers Krishna's opulence. So even when that opulence manifests in extraordinary ways, they only see it that Krishna is so wonderful that Lord Narayan must have come and protected him. Lord Narayan must have come and empowered him in this instance. And they took Garga Muni's words on the name-giving ceremony to mean just that. Even though others who are more inclined towards the Aishvarya and worshiping Krishna in Dwarka, they may see him as God. But in Braj, not. So Mother Jashoda splashed cold water into the pot of boiling milk as if to pacify it. I am going to use you in Krishna's service right now, she said. Do not give up your life like this. So, in another room, baby Krishna, whoops, just a moment here, lost my spot. There. In the other room, because she went to the cook room, she was sitting there churning in one place. In the other room, however, baby Krishna was in a fit of rage. He picked up a stone pestle lying nearby and hit the base of the earthen pot of yogurt that his mother was churning and made a hole in it. A thick stream of yogurt began flowing all over the floor as Krishna watched with fascination. Although he was captivated by the sight of the stream of yogurt spilling onto the ground, it made him remember his mother. Consequently, he fearfully ran into a nearby room that had a doorway leading outside. Hanging from the ceiling was a pot of butter, which enticed his mind. He climbed on top of an overturned grinding mortar and started eating the butter out of the pot, and at the same time feeding some of it to the crows and monkeys who had come. So he thought, I have to get out of here. I might get in trouble. And he ran into the next room, but then he got distracted seeing that butter hanging from the ceiling. And then a nearby mortar, he picked it up, or turned it up, and then climbed on top and could easily reach the butter that way. And he began to feed the monkeys, and the crows were there. When Mother Jashoda returned to the pot of yogurt to continue her churning, she saw the stream of yogurt flowing from the broken pot. She thought, this is surely the work of my clever son. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says in his commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam, on that 9th chapter, 10th canto, Krishna was highly skillful in breaking the earthen pot, for he did not make a sound, nor did his ornaments. Nor did he make any sound in the other room as he climbed on top of the grinding mortar to take butter. Indeed, this could only have been the accomplishment of her intelligent son. By the tiny footprints in the yogurt on the floor, the sweet smell of butter coming from the room nearby, and various other clues, Mother Jashoda easily guessed, oh, my beloved son has entered that very room. Peering inside, she saw Sri Krishna standing on the grinding mortar, stealing fresh butter. She took a small stick in her hand to punish her clever child and tiptoed into the room like a cat. But as soon as she entered, the crows and monkeys fled. Sri Krishna immediately understood, Mother has come. He leapt from the ground because his back was to the door. But the monkeys, they were facing him. And the crow, and they saw her, they immediately ran out. Krishna said, I'm busted. Mother has come. He leapt from the grinding mortar and fled outside toward the royal lane. So he went out into the courtyard and went for the gate to go to the road. Mother Jashoda also ran on the road pursuing her son. The silk cloth on Mother Jashoda's somewhat full bluish limbs fluttered as she swiftly ran, and the beautiful fragrant flowers that were woven into her braid began to fall as if to say, Mother, you are not alone. We are also with you. Catch him quickly. Mother Jashoda's pace exceeded Krishna's, and thus she caught him from behind. If we are to obtain Sri Krishna, then we must love him more than he loves us. Only then can he be controlled. We will also have to love him with great intimacy, Vishramba Bhav, and with the same simple natural attachment, Lokik Sambandhuvat. That means, as appearing like ordinary relationship, the relationships we know in this world, human-like pastimes, Narvat, Leela. The same natural attachment as the residents of Braj, especially the Gopas and their wives. Sri Krishna may be pleased by love that is mixed with the moods of awe and reverence, Aishvarya, but he cannot be controlled by it. Just see. With the mood of a simple mother, Sri Jashoda naturally regards Sri Krishna as her son and chastises him. Sri Krishna is offered worship everywhere else, but when he is in Braj, he is the servant, and the inhabitants of Braj are his masters. On the command of the gopis, he begins to dance. He puts Nanda Baba's slippers on his head and delivers them to him. Under Jogamaya's influence, he forgets his supremacy and enacts his pastimes as an ordinary human being. This is called Madhurya Leela, Sri Krishna's honey-like pastimes. Although Sri Krishna's pastimes in Braj are full of opulence, it does not even slightly stifle the love that the inhabitants of Braj have for him. Instead, it invigorates their honey-like love, causing it to condense even more. This is the speciality of the love in Braj. The practicing devotee, the sadhak, should also desire to perform activities that will melt Sri Krishna's heart. Sri Krishna will not be able to resist him for very long. He will accept that devotee with his whole heart and immerse him in his own sublime service. Thus ends the Dig Darshani Vriti on the first verse. So the point being there that the special love of Braj, this is what this pastime is going to show, that this kind of love, which is not, as Srila Prabhupada translates in Chaitanya Charitamrita, not crippled by knowledge of Krishna's opulence. As soon as you know that Krishna's God, intimacy in the way that the Brajbasis have is impossible. Because if you know he's God, how could you be so intimate? How could you dare to punish him? This is Devaki and Vasudev's situation. As soon as he appeared, they have parental love, but they also knew he was God, and so their first act was to offer prayers of awe and reverence and gratitude and recognition. When Mother Yashoda first saw her son, her first act was tears of love falling from her eyes and taking him and bringing him to her breast and nurturing him with her milk, right? So Devaki never got to do that. So exalted are the inhabitants of Mathura, Devaki and Vasudeva, so exalted, but not like the inhabitants of Braj. And Devaki could never tie up Krishna like this. She could offer prayers, she could ask some benediction, she could never tie him. No, because she knows his position. Krishna can only be tied or controlled by love. So tomorrow we'll do verse 2. Okay. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Srila Gurudev, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Damodar Bandhana Leela. Jai, Jai, Jai.